Have you ever felt a certain kind of sadness you just couldn't put your finger on? Well, today we're talking about a poet who, over a century ago, managed to do just that. His name is Ishikawa Takuboku, and he left behind a perfect anatomy of a very modern kind of sadness. Let's start with this one. It's maybe his most famous poem. Just picture that for a second. A man, totally alone on this huge beach, so overcome with a sorrow he can't even name, that all he can do is cry and play with a crab. It's such a profound image of loneliness, and honestly, it's the key that unlocks his entire world. And that's what's so wild about him. Takuboku died way back in 1912, but his poetry feels like it could have been written on a smartphone yesterday. He was documenting that specific kind of melancholy that comes from feeling disconnected, kind of lost, and just a little bit overwhelmed by the world around you. We've all been there. So how did he do this? How did he capture these feelings so perfectly? Well, a big part of it was his chosen form, the Tanka. These are really short, 5-line poems. And in his collection, which he perfectly titled A Handful of Sand, he uses this tiny format to capture emotions that are as fleeting and as powerful as, well, sand itself. And you'll see this image of sand pop up over and over in his work. For Takuboku, it was this perfect metaphor for everything he couldn't hold on to. Time, happiness, money, even his own life. It's that constant, frustrating feeling of things just slipping away, no matter how tightly you try to clench your fist. And you have to remember this number, 26. He died of tuberculosis when he was just 26 years old. Knowing this makes his words hit even harder. He crammed a whole lifetime of poverty, sickness, and incredibly sharp observation into just 2.5 decades. His insights weren't just theories, they were earned the hard way. So where did all this sadness come from? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle was external, the city. He moved to Tokyo during the Meiji era, hoping to make it as a writer, seeking fame and fortune. But what he found was something very, very different, and something many of us can probably still relate to. You know that dream of moving to the big city, the promise of connection and excitement? For him, the reality was the exact opposite. Instead of opportunity, he just found anonymity. He was just another face in a relentless crowd, which, ironically, only made him feel more alone than ever. This poem just nails that feeling of the daily grind. It's not some big, dramatic, one-time tragedy. It's the slow, repetitive ache of the commute, feeling small and insignificant night after night after night. That self-pity isn't him being narcissistic. It's just a raw, honest admission of pure exhaustion. And look at this one. Asakusa was, and still is, one of Tokyo's most vibrant, lively, bustling neighborhoods. But for Takuboku, being there is like pressing his face against the glass of a party he wasn't invited to. He's surrounded by life, yet feels completely outside of it. And that's the thing, right? Loneliness isn't about being physically alone, it's about being unable to connect. So when your present is this lonely and this difficult, where does your mind go? For Takuboku, it went backwards. He retreated into memories of his furusato, his hometown way up in the rural north. But, and this is key, this wasn't some comforting, cozy escape. Yeah, his nostalgia was like an open wound. He wasn't just missing home, he was mourning a version of himself he felt he'd lost forever. The home he remembered was this idealized past, a place where he belonged, that he could see so clearly in his mind but could never, ever touch again. I mean, can you just imagine the desperation here? He is so profoundly homesick that he goes to a busy train station, the very symbol of his urban isolation, just hoping to catch a scrap of familiarity, the sound of a voice that reminds him of where he came from. It's just such a simple, heartbreaking image. And here, he really reveals the trauma of it all. His departure wasn't some hopeful journey to make his dreams come true. To him, it felt like a violent exile, like he was run out of town. And that feeling of being unwanted, of being driven out, it stuck with him and colored his entire life in the city. Okay, so we've seen his struggle with the city, with his past, but maybe the biggest fight was the one happening inside his own head. And this brings us to this incredible irony in another one of his famous collections. So he titled his collection, A Song of Self-Love. Sounds pretty positive, right? Well, it's not. It is a work of absolutely brutal self-examination. He looks at his own ambition, his own desires, and he doesn't see them as strengths. He sees them as this selfish burden he just can't get under control. The self-love is deeply, deeply sarcastic. Does that sound familiar to anyone? It's basically the 1912 version of imposter syndrome. He was trying to project this image of a confident, brilliant artist, but the effort just left him feeling hollow and even more alone. He was his own worst critic, always feeling this huge gap between the man he wanted to be and the man he felt he actually was.
So with all this loneliness and poverty and self-doubt, you might be thinking, okay, I get it, the guy was depressed. And yeah, you're not wrong. But is that all there is to it? Is this just poetry about despair? Or did he find something else inside all that sadness?
And this is where things get really interesting. See, Takuboku's form of resilience wasn't about finding happiness, it was about finding meaning. It was about paying incredibly close attention to the small, the mundane, and often the really difficult moments of his daily life. He basically realized he wasn't going to become the famous, successful writer he'd always dreamed of being, so instead, he turned his poetic lens on the here and now. These little details don't make the pain go away, not at all, but they exist right alongside it, giving life this texture and this strange, bittersweet kind of beauty.
This one just hits you right in the gut, doesn't it? It's such a devastatingly human thing to want. He isn't asking for fame or riches, he's just asking for the simple dignity of meaningful work. The desire for a purpose is so strong that finishing just one good task would be enough to make his whole life feel complete.
This poem is just incredible. It's a perfect moment. You had this sensory pleasure, the smell of new ink, a symbol of his art, his passion, and it's immediately undercut by a literal pang of hunger. Joy and pain, beauty and poverty, all in one single breath. That is his genius, finding the entire world in one complex, contradictory feeling. And this final poem really just sums it all up. The endless struggle, the feeling that you're just spinning your wheels, getting nowhere. But that last line, I just stare at my hands. What does that mean? Is it despair? Is it resignation? Or is it a quiet recognition of the only tools he really has, the hands that write, the only things that are truly his? Over a century later, Takuboku doesn't give us any easy answers, but he gives our own quiet sadness a voice and a strange, enduring companionship.